Back in the 1920s, North 5th Street in Camden, New Jersey had many wealthy people with houses to match their financial standing. But over the years, the neighbourhood became depressed and downtrodden and was a place best avoided, especially at night. One such house that was once a respectable private residence was 522 North 5th Street. From the ground floor rose a turning staircase that led up to 2 more flights of stairs. The staircase was the most impressive part of the house, with a neatly carved wooden banister framed all the way up and through the house. Unfortunately, heavy dust now lay on the floors, and its glory days had long since passed. Sometime in the 1950s, the Martin family moved into the large house that was able to accommodate both the parents and 2 daughters in their 20s. One of the daughters, called Edna, worked at a local radio station in Camden, and the other sister was called Janet. After cleaning the large house and making it presentable, Edna started to notice strange things about the house, where she would hear the sound of rustling silk, along with the swishing of a dress, but could not make out what was causing the sounds. On another occasion, when she was at home by herself, she could hear someone walking up the stairs and then enter the middle bedroom, followed by a deep sigh. Fearing that someone had entered the house, she bravely walked towards the bedroom and just before entering the room, heard the distinct sound of bed springs squeaking as if someone had just laid down. On entering the room, she found it completely empty and even checked the bedspread, but found no sign that anyone had been there. She then heard the sound of the rustling of clothes and sensed the presence of someone in the room. She immediately went back to her room. Edna now had the strangest feeling that they were sharing the house with others beside themselves. A short time after that incident, her sister Janet awoke to the sound of very light footsteps coming up the stairs. They sounded like a child's, and as they reached the top, receded down the hallway, and she could hear floorboards creak as it entered her bedroom. Janet was frozen in fear and could not move or speak, and then the steps came to a sudden halt beside her bed. She could feel the presence of someone looking down and staring at her. Somehow, she managed to fall asleep, and there were no more incidents for a few weeks. She'd almost forgotten the incident until she came home after a night out. Janet usually undressed in the middle bedroom and threw her clothes on the empty bed, but then heard the sound of someone sighing before turning over, as if being disturbed from their sleep. As it was dark, Janet assumed it was her niece sleeping over, and so picked the clothes up off the bed and placed them on the chair, and thought nothing more about it before going to bed. The following morning she went down to breakfast, expecting to see her niece Mickey at the table, but she was not there. She checked upstairs and found the bed she expected to see Mickey in was empty, and called out to her mother and asked where Mickey was. Her mother said that she'd not seen Mickey for weeks. Janet then froze in fear and thought, so who was in the bed last night and had let out that deep sigh? Both Edna and Janet had now had strange experiences that could not be explained. One evening, they had a friend called Joanne staying at the house, and Joanne was typing in the front bedroom whilst Janet was laying on her stomach on the bed. At the time of the incident, Joanne had her back to Janet when suddenly Janet had the unusual sensation on the bottom of her shoe. It felt as if someone had hit her hard on the sole. The noise was so loud that Joanne suddenly turned around to see what had made the sound. It had caused Janet to abruptly jump up and move to the window. When Joanne asked her what it was that made the noise, Janet could only shrug her shoulders. However, she was thinking to herself that someone was trying to gain her attention. On another occasion, the 3 young women were sitting on the bed, and suddenly, at the foot of the bed, a greenish thing slowly materialized out of nowhere. Janet let out a scream and just stared. It appears that she was the only one that could see it. She then observed a small head, and then everything vanished. The fact that all of them had experienced strange happenings, none were prepared to accept the fact that there were ghosts in the house, and never discussed it. Edna had a fiancé who was an airman at a base in Trenton, New Jersey, and one night found that he'd missed the late night bus back to camp, so he waited downstairs until his next bus was due. The young airman then settled back on the couch with his cigarette. Suddenly, he heard the front door open. The front door was heavy and old-fashioned, and a lock that could only be opened with a key. He then heard the vestibule door open, followed by an icy atmosphere in the room, and assumed an intruder was in the house. He then experienced an eerie feeling where his hair appeared to stand on end, as though an electric current was passing through him. Yet he was not frightened. A bell then started to ring that had been enclosed in a case in the corner of the room. He thought who was ringing the bell, as there was nobody else in the room. He decided it felt safer to wait outside for the next bus. That same night, Edna was awakened by the sound of someone clanging against the pipes downstairs, and believed it was her fiancé playing games with her, as he often did. She ran downstairs, but he was nowhere to be seen, and the noise suddenly stopped. She later told him about the pipes, and he told her about the ringing bell. They were now certain there were ghosts in the house. A few months later, her friend Joanne was down in the basement and was rifling through some old clothes that previous tenants had left behind many years before. She then felt a strange sensation, and her hair stood on end, and as she lifted her hand to touch it, it was stiff and raised up. At the same time, she had a tingling sensation all over her body. She abruptly dropped the dress and waited, and she felt certain that someone was staring at her and was waiting for them to speak. She then slowly turned around and saw a whirlpool of smoke spinning and moving at a fast rate. It had the shape of a human figure, and as she looked at it in total fear, she could clearly see where the face should have been, but instead there was a grey mass of smoke, punctuated by two large holes where the eyes should have been. As she stared in horror, the shape slowly moved towards her, and it felt as if the air was being drawn from her lungs. And as it drew even closer, she thought that if she did not move immediately, she would be trapped in the cellar. She slowly made her way to the stairs and crawled up to the ground floor. As time went by, she preferred not to accept what had happened and preferred to believe that someone had merely passed by the cellar window. After leaving the house many years later, Edna visited the house in July 1967 with a co-worker who also happened to be psychic. The co-worker had only been in the house a short time when she saw a woman on the stairs. She said there was also a little boy, and the mother had fallen to her death on the stairs. The woman told the apparition to move on, as you will only suffer if you stay in the house. The psychic co-worker claimed that the woman only wanted sympathy and to be amongst the living. She again told the woman to go home, and heard the rustling of a dress. The house was eventually demolished.